When the former owner called me after the move, I was standing alone in the kitchen. I remember that clearly. The boxes were still half open. The house smelled like fresh paint and old wood mixed together. I had just put the kettle on the stove. I was tired, but hopeful. This house was meant to be a new beginning for me, a quiet place where I could finally rest. The phone rang once, then again. I almost did not answer. When I did, his voice sounded unsure, not loud, not angry, just hesitant. He said, "I forgot the hidden cameras, but..." That sentence.
A single choice can change your life forever. Today, I'm sharing how betrayal forced me to choose myself when no one else would. Before the first chapter unfolds, please subscribe and hit like to help us reach others who might need to hear this. I'd love to know where you're watching from tonight. Leave your city name in the comments so I can welcome you personally. And now, the story begins.
Stayed in the air. It did not finish, but my heart already knew something was wrong. I did not scream. I did not ask questions right away. I just held the phone tighter and leaned against the counter. Sometimes fear does not shout. Sometimes it whispers. I had moved here to feel safe again, to heal, to forget the years of quiet pain. But in that moment, standing in a kitchen that was supposed to be mine, I felt watched, not by cameras, but by the past that refused to leave me alone. And that call brought back a story I had buried deep inside, a story about family, about trust, about being told to leave and smiling instead of crying. Before I tell you about that phone call, I need to tell you who I am. I am not a strong woman in the way people admire. I never raised my voice. I never fought back. I survived quietly. I was a mother once, before I became a stranger in my own family. I raised my son with care and fear mixed together, fear that the world would hurt him the way it had hurt me. My husband passed away many years ago. He was kind, but quiet. When he left this world, the house became too silent for me. After that, I moved in with my son and his wife. At first, they welcomed me with warm words and careful smiles. "You are always welcome here," my daughter-in-law said. I believed her. I cooked meals, I washed dishes, I stayed out of the way. I learned how to walk softly in my own life. But kindness can slowly turn into patience, and patience can turn into a burden. I saw it in her eyes first, the way she sighed when I entered the room, the way silence grew longer at the dinner table. My son never said much. He never defended me either. And then one evening, very calmly, she said, "Maybe it would be better if you had your own place." I smiled instead of crying. Not because it did not hurt, but because I did not want them to see that it did. That smile followed me into this house, the house I bought with the little savings I had, the house where I hoped to disappear gently. The house was not big, but it was clean. It had a small garden and a narrow hallway. The former owner was polite, quiet, like me. He showed me the rooms and spoke about repairs and paint. Nothing felt wrong. I signed the papers with shaking hands, not from fear, but from relief. For the first time in years, no one would be bothered by my presence. When I moved in, it was raining softly, the kind of rain that feels like a lullaby. I unpacked slowly. I talked to myself. I told myself this was peace. That's when the phone rang, and that's when he said those words. I forgot the hidden cameras, but when the former owner paused on the phone, I waited. I could hear his breathing. It was uneven, like he was choosing his words carefully. "I forgot the hidden cameras," he said again, softer this time. "But they are old. They are not working. At least, I think they are not." My fingers went cold around the phone. I did not know what to say. I had never thought about cameras. Why would I? I asked him one simple question. "Where?" He cleared his throat. "In the living room and the hallway.
There was one in the kitchen, too, but that one was removed. Removed. The word echoed inside me. I thanked him. I do not know why. Maybe old habits? Maybe fear. When the call ended, the house felt different. The walls felt closer. The silence felt heavier. I stood still for a long time. The kettle had started to whistle, but I did not move. I just listened to that sound, like it was trying to warn me. I told myself I was overreacting. I told myself this was just my mind playing tricks on me. But then I remembered something I had learned a long time ago. When people say, "I forgot," it usually means they were hoping you would never find out. That night, I did not sleep well. Every small sound woke me. The ticking clock in the hallway, the wind touching the windows, the soft creak of the floor. I kept my bedroom light on, not because I was afraid of the dark, but because darkness makes you feel unseen. I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. I wondered how long those cameras had been there. I wondered who had watched them. I thought of my old house. I thought of my daughter-in-law's eyes when she asked me to leave. For years, I had felt watched in my own family, judged quietly, measured silently. And now, even alone, I could not escape that feeling. In the morning, I called my son. I did not tell him about the cameras right away. I asked him how he was. He said he was busy. I wanted to say, "I feel scared," but the words stayed inside me. When the call ended, I felt foolish. Why was I afraid to speak, even now? Over the next few days, I noticed small things. The hallway light would be on when I was sure I had turned it off. A cupboard door felt slightly open. Once, I heard a soft click near the living room wall. I tried to explain everything logically. Old wiring, my memory failing me. But fear does not listen to logic. I bought a small stool and checked the corners of the room. I saw a tiny black dot near the ceiling. It was covered with paint, but not completely. I stepped down slowly and sat on the sofa. My heart felt tired. Not fast, just tired. I remembered my husband's voice from years ago. "Peace should feel safe," he used to say. This did not feel safe. One afternoon, my neighbor knocked on the door. She was kind, middle-aged. She brought tea leaves as a welcome gift. We sat at the kitchen table. Steam rose from our cups. She asked me about the former owner. I told him he seemed quiet. She nodded slowly. Then she said something that made my chest tighten. "He liked to know everything," she said. "Who came, who went, when lights were on." I asked her what she meant. She shrugged. "He used to watch the house from his car sometimes." I smiled politely, but inside, something cracked. That night, I checked the locks twice, then 3 times. Fear has a way of waking old memories. I remembered how my daughter-in-law used to rearrange things after I cleaned, how she never said thank you, how my son avoided my eyes. Once I had overheard her whisper, "She watches everything." That sentence had hurt me then. Now it returned, sharp and clear. I had spent my life trying to not be a burden, trying to not take up space. And yet, I had always been treated like someone who did not belong. Was this house doing the same thing to me, making me feel unwanted even when I was alone? One morning, I gathered courage. I called a technician. He came in the afternoon. He was young and spoke gently. He checked the walls, the ceilings, the wiring. When he found the first camera, he did not look surprised. When he found the second, he frowned a little bit. "These are not that old," he said quietly. My hands started shaking. "Do they work?" I asked. He hesitated. "Some parts were disconnected," he said, "but not all." I sat down slowly. He did not say more. He did not need to.
That evening, the former owner called again. This time, his voice was tense. He asked if I had found anything. I told him the truth. There was silence on the other end, longer than before. Then he said, "I did not mean any harm." I did not answer. He continued, "I only checked sometimes for safety." Safety, another word that feels different when spoken by different people. I asked him one question. "Did you watch after I moved in?" He did not answer right away. That was enough. After that call, I felt exposed. Not physically, emotionally, like someone had read pages of my life I never shared. I thought about my quiet routines, my prayers, my tears at night. Had someone seen those moments? I wrapped myself in a shawl and sat near the window. Rain began again, soft and steady. I whispered to myself, "You are allowed to feel safe." But my voice sounded unsure. It was not just about cameras. It was about control, about being watched without being cared for. I had lived that life before. In my son's house, I was seen but never heard, noticed but never valued. And now, even in a house that was supposed to be mine, someone else still held power. That realization hurt more than fear.
The night after that second phone call, I did not turn on the television. I did not play the radio. I wanted silence, but silence did not come. I sat in the living room with one small lamp on. Its light barely reached the corners of the ceiling. Those corners felt different now, like eyes that refused to close. I wrapped my shawl tighter around my shoulders, not because it was cold, but because I felt uncovered. I kept thinking about the question I had asked him. "Did you watch after I moved in?" He had not answered. People say silence can be gentle, but sometimes silence is a confession. That was the moment I understood something important. This was no longer about a house. It was about my right to exist without being observed. And that thought brought back the day my daughter-in-law asked me to leave. It was a quiet afternoon. The house smelled like cooked rice and soap. She stood near the door. My son sat on the sofa looking at his phone. She spoke softly. "We think you will be more comfortable on your own." I remember nodding. I remember smiling. Inside, something folded in on itself. I wanted my son to look at me, just once, but he did not. That was the day I learned how easy it is for people to watch your pain without stepping into it. And now, years later, someone else had been watching again. Different walls, same feeling. The next morning, I called the technician again. I asked him to come back. This time, I asked him to check the storage room, a place the former owner had said nothing about. He climbed a ladder and moved a loose panel. Behind it, he found something small and black, another camera. "This one is newer," he said quietly. It was not painted over. I felt my knees weaken. I sat on the floor. He unplugged it and placed it in my hand. It felt heavier than it looked. I asked him, could someone still access it? He nodded slowly. If it was connected remotely, yes. I closed my eyes. In that moment, I did not feel fear. I felt humiliation, like someone had read my diary without permission, like my quiet life had been taken and touched. I called the former owner myself this time. My voice was calm, calmer than I expected. I told him what we found. He sighed, not in surprise, in defeat. "I did not remove everything," he said. "I meant to." I asked him why. He was quiet for a long time, and then he said something I will never forget. He said, "I was lonely after I moved out. I liked seeing the house alive." The house alive. Not me, not my feelings. The house. That sentence broke something open inside me. I told him to never contact me again. my voice did not shake. When the call ended, I realized something strange. I was no longer powerless. After the technician left, I locked the door and slid down against it. I cried for the first time since moving in. Not loudly, just quietly. I cried for the woman who always smiled, for the mother who stayed silent, for the person who kept being watched but never protected. I whispered my husband's name. I told him I was tired. The rain outside grew heavier. It matched my breathing. Sometimes turning points are not loud moments. They are soft breaks. That evening, I stood in front of the mirror in the bathroom. I looked older than I remembered, but I also looked present. I spoke to my reflection. This is your life. No one answered, and that felt right. For the first time, I understood something deeply. Being alone is not the same as being invisible, and being watched is not the same as being seen. That night, I wrote a letter to my son. I did not accuse him. I did not blame him. I wrote about the house, about fear, about feeling small. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. I was not ready to send it. Some truths need time to breathe. The next day, I changed the locks. I installed new lights. I asked the technician to remove everything. As he worked, I made tea. I sat at the kitchen table again. This time, my hands were steady. I realized that healing does not always come from forgiveness first. Sometimes it comes from boundaries, and that was my turning point.
After the cameras were removed, the house felt different. Not lighter, just honest. The walls were the same, the rooms had not changed, but the air no longer felt borrowed. I slept better that night. Not deeply, but enough. I woke up before sunrise and sat by the window. The sky was pale blue. The world looked calm again. For the first time since moving in, I felt like I was the only one inside my life. I began doing small things on purpose, things I had stopped doing without noticing. I played the radio softly in the mornings. I sang along when I remembered the words. I cooked meals that took time, not just quick food to avoid being noticed. I moved furniture slowly, listening to my own decisions. Chair here, table there. Each choice felt like a quiet statement. I am here. Healing did not arrive like a visitor. It grew like a plant. Slow, careful. One afternoon, my phone rang. I knew who it was before I answered. My son sounded tired, older than his years. "I heard you changed the locks," he said. "Yes," I replied. There was silence. Then he asked, "Are you okay?" No one had asked me that in a long time. "I am learning to be," I said. He did not argue. He did not defend anyone. Sometimes silence means listening. A week later, he came to see me. He stood at the door, unsure. I invited him in. We sat at the kitchen table. He looked around slowly, like he was seeing me for the first time. "I did not know you felt so alone," he said quietly. I did not blame him. I did not list old wounds. "I did not know how to speak," I replied. We both understood that sentence. He apologized. Not with long words, just one sentence. "I should have protected you." That was enough. Forgiveness does not always need explanations. Sometimes it only needs truth. I told him about the cameras. His face changed. "That should not have happened to you," he said. No anger, just regret. After he left, I cried again. But this time, the tears felt different. They did not weigh me down. They washed something away. I realized I had carried guilt that was never mine. Guilt for being old, for needing space, for existing. I opened the drawer and took out the letter I had written. I read it once, then I tore it gently. Some words served their purpose without being heard. A few days later, the former owner tried to call again. I did not answer. I blocked the number. I did not feel cruel. I felt complete. Closure does not always come with conversation. Sometimes it comes with silence chosen freely. Weeks passed. I planted flowers in the small garden. I watered them each morning. I spoke to neighbors. I smiled when I wanted to. At night, I turned off all the lights and sat in the dark. Not afraid. The darkness no longer felt like a place where someone could hide. It felt like rest.
The house is quiet now. Not the kind of quiet that makes your chest feel heavy. Not the kind that feels like someone has left you behind. This is a different quiet. It feels settled. It feels honest. In the evenings, I sit in the living room with one small lamp turned on. Its light does not reach every corner, and that is okay. I no longer look up at the ceiling. I no longer wonder who might be watching. Instead, I look at my hands. They rest on my lap, still, older than they used to be. These hands have cooked meals for many years. They have cleaned floors that were never truly mine. They have folded clothes that belonged to other people. They have held back tears more times than I can count. Now they are finally resting, and that simple thing feels like freedom. For a long time, I thought the pain came from the cameras, from the fear, from the feeling of being watched. But that was not the deepest wound. The deepest wound was realizing how familiar that feeling was. I had lived like that before, in my son's house, in quiet rooms where I tried to take up as little space as possible. I spoke softly. I walked carefully. I finished my meals quickly, not because anyone asked me to, but because I learned it was safer that way. The cameras did not create my fear. They reminded me of it. They showed me what it feels like to exist without privacy, without dignity. And once I understood that, I knew I could never go back to living that way again. People talk about forgiveness as if it is something loud, something dramatic. They imagine hugs, tears, big speeches. But forgiveness does not always look like that. Sometimes forgiveness is very quiet. I forgave my son, not because he did everything right, not because the past disappeared. I forgave him because I did not want to carry bitterness into the years I have left. Forgiveness for me was not saying it's okay. It was saying I choose peace. I also forgave myself. That took longer. I forgave myself for staying silent, for smiling when I wanted to cry, for believing I had to earn my place in other people's lives. I forgave the woman who thought being invisible was the same as being loved. That forgiveness felt like putting down a heavy bag I had carried for too long. One morning, I stood in front of the mirror and really looked at myself. Not quickly, not with judgment. I noticed the lines around my eyes, the softness in my face, the tiredness that had nothing to do with sleep. And I felt something unexpected. Respect. This woman had survived many quiet hurts. She had learned to bend without breaking. She had kept kindness even when it cost her comfort. She deserved rest. She deserved safety. She deserved a life that did not require permission. That morning, I smiled at my reflection, not out of habit, but because I meant it. My days are simple now. I wake up early. I make tea slowly. I open the windows and let air move through the rooms. I listen to the sounds of the street waking up. Sometimes I sit in silence. Sometimes I play music. I choose what the day feels like. I clean when I want to. I rest when I need to. I no longer rush to prove usefulness. I am useful because I exist.
That truth took a long time to reach me, but now that it has, I hold on to it gently. For many years, I believed home was where other people allowed me to stay. I was wrong. Home is where your breath slows down, where your shoulders relax, where your thoughts do not hide. This house is not perfect. It is small, it has flaws, but it holds my silence without judgment. It does not watch me. It does not expect me to disappear. It lets me be. And that is more than enough. At night, sometimes I turn off all the lights and sit in the dark, not because I am sad, but because I am no longer afraid. The darkness used to feel dangerous, like a place where someone could hide. Now it feels like rest. The dark does not watch, it does not judge, it simply exists, just like me. If you are listening to this and feel small in your own life, I want you to hear something. You are not too much. You are not a burden. You do not need to shrink to deserve love. If you have learned to smile instead of cry, to stay quiet instead of speak, to leave instead of stay, you are not weak. You are tired. And being tired does not mean you are broken. It means you have carried too much for too long. Choosing yourself does not always mean leaving loudly. It does not always mean confrontation. Sometimes it means locking a door, turning off a phone, sitting down when you are used to standing. Sometimes it means saying nothing at all, and letting that be enough. I do not know how many years I have left. No one does. But I know how I want to live them. I want to live slowly, honestly, without fear of being seen or unseen. I want to live in a way that allows peace to arrive and stay. And now, finally, I know how to do that. The house is quiet now, and so is my heart. Not empty, not lonely, just still. And in that stillness, I am finally home.